So people have been asking what is different in the new version of the language of emotions? A lot. Let me start by going through the different emotion families. Let's start with the anger family. The anger family, the work of that family is about boundaries, rules, and behavioral guidelines. The emotions are anger, apathy and boredom, shame and guilt, and hatred. And there's been updates in, I think, all of these. For anger, the question used to be what must be protected and what must be restored. And what we realized after a number of years is that people stopped at what must be protected. And they didn't even remember that there was a second question. And many people, they get kind of like, they make boundaries of brick. And I realized that's not the work of creating boundaries. Boundaries are relational. They're about how you work relationships through with other people. And so we changed the question. So now the new questions are, what do I value? And then the first questions were put into one, which is what must be protected and restored. So the first thing we're looking at is what do we value? So if you don't know what you value, you may set boundaries and protect everything and not even know what you're doing, right? And we've all seen that with our own anger and with the anger of other people. If you know what you value, then your boundaries become very precise. And if you're fighting with someone and you're just about to set a harsh boundary, well, I'll never speak to you again. Asking yourself, what do I value? I value this relationship. I value this person. I value myself. I value ethics and empathy, right? So then my response and my boundary setting becomes much more, I would say, appropriate and valuable. Yeah. So we're fighting, and I ask, what do I value? Then I can set a boundary in an entirely new way rather than just protecting. And I might say, I see that we're going around and around about this. And what I want to say, what's important to me is that you and I have this strong relationship. And this thing we're fighting about is scaring me. And it's making me feel like our relationship's falling apart. So can we put this fight aside and talk about what's important to us? Right? Or something like that. It's different in people say, what do you say to set a boundary? It's completely and totally situational. It's based on the relationship. But asking yourself what you value is really important. The change with apathy is we've become able to see it not as apathy and boredom. I think a lot of us have been taught that apathy and boredom are signs of sort of weakness and a lack of imagination. What we've found is that apathy and boredom arise when you can't set boundaries because the place or the relationship or the people really don't care about you. They weren't built for you and they don't have time for you. So think of a really boring course that you had to take to get through high school or college. Everybody had to take it. It was completely pro forma. It means nothing. You just have to take it. That's a kind of a course that wasn't built for you, that doesn't have your own needs in mind. And so it would be normal for you to feel apathy, for you to feel boredom. And the questions we have for apathy and boredom is to help us understand why. Why is this place so inappropriate? And why can I not set clear boundaries? We call apathy the mask, the protective mask for anger. So the questions are, what is being avoided? And it could be, I'm avoiding the reality of this place, which is not for me. The second question is, what can be made conscious, right? So if I'm in a really boring class and I'm, putting that sort of boundary of apathy and boredom up, it is a boundary. I can go inside myself and start thinking, well, what would be a good class? How would I build a university without these kinds of courses? How could the teacher make this more, right? I begin to have sort of control over my own space, my own life world, even in a situation where my needs are completely and totally unimportant. So apathy and boredom can really protect you from situations where your needs are not important, right? It's not exactly an abusive place, but it's certainly not a place that was ever built for you or that takes any part of your needs into account, right? So apathy and boredom, yes, we like them, but we also go inside and don't be a reaction to your environment. Maintain your dignity and your sense of self within an unwelcoming environment. With shame and guilt, I had a question. It was like, who has been hurt and what must be made right? But that word hurt, that didn't feel right because it didn't really key into what shame is doing, what shame and guilt are doing. So the new question is, whose ethics and values have been disrespected? And the next one is, what must be made right? So shame is all about your ethics and values, the ethics and values that you've updated, you've uploaded, you've agreed to. If you step across a line with yourself, your shame should say, all right, what's going on here? Or if you step across a line with someone else and you're going against your own ethics and values, shame should be, what's going on? So whose ethics and values have been disrespected? It could be yours. A piece about shame that's really important to understand is you may have uploaded ethics and values and moral structure that doesn't actually belong to you, right? You may have uploaded pretty toxic things, but if you agreed to them, if you have agreed to them, then they're a part of your shame and your guilt's job, right? It's their job to hold you to these agreements that you've made. So the work with shame and guilt is not to get it to go away, because we have a word in the English language called shameless, which we know is not a good thing. Shameless people are not to be trusted, right? They're not living up to ethics and morals and values. They're shameless. So we don't want to get rid of shame. What we do want to get rid of is terrible shaming messages that can't be lived, or that are, we picked them up when we were a child, like children should be seen and not heard. And you grow up and you're 40 years old and you still can't speak up. That's a message that isn't working, right? And so we have a practice specific to shame called burning contracts. And it's about how to make decisions today about what your ethics and morals are, and to live within a moral structure that is healing and appropriate for you, right? If you've got shame that comes at you like this, you can ask yourself, whose ethics and values have been disrespected? Not, I'm a terrible person, but whose values are these? Are they ones that I want to live any longer? You have choices, you have options, and that's awesome. The fourth emotion in the anger family is hatred. And the questions for hatred stayed the same. Hatred is about doing your shadow work. What has fallen into my shadow and what must be reintegrated? Hatred is not mere dislike. It's where your entire psyche goes hard at someone, just like they shouldn't live, like there's rage, there's so much going on. It's a complete loss of your boundaries and a complete projection onto another person. So it's really important to do your shadow work. And I talk about that in the book. So these are the changes to the anger family. Not a lot of changes, just some tweaks to get the question to be closer to the actual work of the emotion, so that when you ask the question, because that's a part of the practice, you are actually working with the emotion itself. For a lot of people, the questions they ask their emotions are this: why am I so angry? There's no need to be anxious, right? The questions they shut things down. But if you're angry and you ask, what do I value? And what must be protected and restored? Then you are in the work of anger. You are in the realm of anger, and you're doing what needs to be done so that that emotion can give you the intelligence it has. And then you can move on from there, right? You don't have to feel angry all the time. You can meet the anger as itself, engage with it as itself, and then learn the lesson that it has come to teach you. We'll look at the other three emotion families soon. Thank you.